So, I was halfway through working on a video about Ted Lasso Season 2, me speaking as a therapist, breaking down and discussing all of the therapy scenes from Season 2. I already did one video starting that, this was going to be the follow-up video, but then the new Ted Lasso episode of Season 3 came out, the big clash of Nate Shelley's West Ham versus Ted's Richmond, and I don't know, you probably will still get the other videos soon, but I just really want to talk about this now instead. I absolutely loved this episode. It had me smiling all throughout, that proud, sweet sort of smile you get watching people grow in a very authentic way. So yes, even if I now have to work at breakneck speed to get this video done in time, even if it leaves this a little rushed, this is what you're getting now, okay? A discussion about Season 3, Episode 4. I demand that you enjoy it. So it now does seem everything I predicted before to happen in this series was correct. Well done me, I win a cookie. I said last time that Richmond won't win the title. They might not even necessarily beat West Ham in the table. They won't need to. Rebecca is not defined by her relationship and rivalry to Rupert, nor Nate by his to Ted, nor vice versa. I said that sometimes you don't need to defeat your enemies, you just need to go on and live your life. And a sports story is such a perfect setting to express that idea, because it does give you a winner versus loser setup that you can then get to peel things away from. So perfect a setting that I'm starting to think this was the main concept behind the entire show in the first place, and if it was, it's a testament to the writer's confidence in their story that they've waited until Season 3 for that concept to really come into fruition with Richmond versus West Ham. What's so great about it though, I think, is how much deeper this theme actually goes, and we're going to take a moment to look at it, starting with the more obvious point first. Hopefully not too obvious. Rebecca. You know, she is just desperate for West Ham to beat Richmond in this match. Desperate to beat Rupert to the extent she loses it a little at half time.
I believe in you, Ted.
And then West Ham win, and it stings. Rupert takes the chance to gloat that he was always so desperate to take, and you know, the world doesn't end. Even more so, Rebecca sees Rupert with his assistant, and I think it reminds her just what kind of a man Rupert is. And suddenly she has empathy for Bex, realising Bex is not this replacement Rebecca, not some newer, younger model who exists to remind Rebecca how hurt she was, but Bex is someone else going through the exact same thing Rebecca went through. Which I think we've all known has probably been true for Bex, but this is where it really hits Rebecca. And personally, I think that could be a big step in Rebecca liberating herself. Ted says,
"You already won, you know. Got that turkey out of your life."
And Ted's right, technically. She hasn't fully won yet because Rupert is still very much walking round her head. She's still very much eager to project all the pain, humiliation, feelings of being rejected and discarded as a loser back onto Rupert. Make him feel like the victim for once. But, you know, she doesn't need to project it anywhere. She can handle those feelings now because there is more to her than just being a victim of Rupert's. She is an entirely separate person who amounts to so much more than that. And in that sense, I think feeling empathy for what Bex is going through also means getting to feel empathy for herself, for what she went through as well. To resolve the feelings she still has there knocking around her brain, I think allowing herself to feel that really very much liberates her. I hope I've explained it okay. Please comment if I haven't. Let's move on because the bigger point is this. Rebecca is so close to letting go now. We've seen this growth. You know, remember how angry she was in Season 1. She wanted to burn Richmond to the ground in order to hurt Rupert. She also wanted to project onto Leslie back then and make him feel the way Rupert made her feel. And then instead of burning it to the ground, she ended up making something beautiful out of it. Anger is the important point and a very complicated emotion, and this show is so mature in its understanding of it. This is where things get really good, talking about rage. But first, you know, I gotta do this.
Banter's trending.
What are you talking about?
Yes, World Anvil are still sponsoring me. This is a company I genuinely love. I'm going to keep promoting and supporting them as long as I physically can. And all of you are going to listen intently. World Anvil is an online tool for world building, character creation, story planning and writing, campaign building and playing lots of different games. A load of useful stuff. I use it for my novel with the sprawling mess all of my world building turned into, and even just like, I was keen on my fictional town having a strong sense of community, so there was pages after page of who lives where, what do they think of their neighbours, where do they work, what are their opinions on local gossip. I don't know, a very big sprawling mess that World Anvil can really help to organise with hyperlinks, different categories, timelines. You can even completely build out of your own designed calendars. Again, with hyperlinks attached to other articles and a map to link the different timeline events too, if you fancy that. When there is so much detail, it is hard to remember it all, and having something like this to just quickly glance at and see what happens where and when becomes so damn handy. And there are other tools as well. I've not used all of them yet myself, but all the ones I have used are pretty straightforward. They do have lots of tutorials for how to use everything, but I've never needed to watch them. I've just figured it out myself pretty easily. There is a link in the description, and as a pinned comment there is the code TREE, which entitles you to 40% off any of their yearly subscriptions. And if you want to try it out first, they have a free version. Test that out for as long as you like first. Get familiar with World Anvil. You know, if you're interested, click the link. World Anvil. The typical idea about anger that people have is that it's a bad thing, it's destructive, it's something you shouldn't feel and shouldn't act on. And you know, speaking as a therapist again, who has worked with many kids that have suppressed their anger and turned it inwards, or become a little numb, or reacted against it with positivity, in a lot of those experiences there is nothing better in the work than when I see those kids finally allowing themselves to be fucking furious at what they've been through, which can, you know, be the worst experiences. Damn right they should be furious about it. They matter enough as people to be angry about the hurt they were put through. Yeah, anger can be very destructive, and this episode actually demonstrates that really well through the example of Nate ripping up the Believe sign. Roy and Coach Beard showed the team the CCTV footage of that, thinking it would fire the team up, which it could have done, to be fair. Instead, it backfired, and their anger was massively destructive, led to 3 red cards and Richmond losing 4-1. Another great example has been Nate. He has spent half his life being made to feel worthless and tiny, not just in the bullying he went through. Also, I think the kind but slightly painful way people have somewhat pitied him and seen him as a bit harmless. And even more than that, the way his dad treats him, which is probably a lot of what made him feel so small and then so easy a target for bullying in the first place. Nate was all overly polite and respectful and apologetic for everything. Sorry for bothering you all with my worthless presence, sorry if I'm getting in the way, struggling to even offer Ted his thoughts on the team. He had so much to be furious about, but he suppressed it all. It only leaked out in tiny, not particularly conscious ways. And then, bang! Suddenly he's attacking Ted, telling him he's a joke who should be shipped back to canvas. He's ripping up the Believe sign. All things he should really be telling his father instead, but that's just far too intimidating. All things he should probably be saying with more civility and more openness to hear Ted's response and to try and resolve it, but that's also too much for him right now. Unfortunately, that is often the way when that anger comes out after suppressing it for God knows how long. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming that it takes over everything and it's just pure anger. For Nate, it burned bridges here. It was painful. And that isn't great, no. You know, sometimes I see kids who teachers look on as very quiet and nice, and then after however long of counselling, suddenly they're getting angry in class, having strange outbursts, and the teachers are getting annoyed with them. And with me, as though counselling has made them worse. But no, it's important. They've got a lot of anger that has to come to the surface. Sure, they're not expressing it in the best ways yet, but they need to express it to be able to start wrapping their head around it, channeling it, hopefully even resolving it at some point. Not always, but sometimes that just is a very bumpy road. Nate showed his rage to Ted. Ted did not deserve that, but Ted probably got it because he's the only person who would actually listen to it rather than shout back and retaliate and stop Nate. And then Nathan went away to West Ham, wanting to continue pouring his anger onto Ted, seeing him as a villain, except, as I said last video, Ted was very positive towards Nate, actually, in the press conferences. Ted isn't horrible. Ted never deserved Nate's anger. I think Nathan knows that, really. It's just all very muddled for him. And we see growth straight away for Nathan this episode. He assumed all the bridges had been burned, so why bother feeling guilty? Except, no, they clearly haven't. Ted still seems to be very positive towards him, so now part of Nate is still angry, yeah, like when he knocks over the Subbuteo figure of Ted.
Whoops.
But then he picks it up and delicately places it back where it belongs. Nate is starting to allow himself to forgive Ted and to actually feel the guilt he's been shutting away.
Just haven't seen Ted since I left, and feel like I owe him an apology or something.
And it really makes me happy to see. Also, here's a throwaway point. Do you think it's significant at all that Nate has a Subbuteo version of the squad with all the figures that he uses to think through tactics? Subbuteo being a competitive game, whereas Ted's version is a Lego stadium that he built with his son. Not a competitive game with winners and losers, just something beautiful you build collectively. Is there a deliberate metaphor in that? Nate was furious and destructive, exactly as Rebecca was in season 1, exactly as the team was after half time, and that wasn't good, but neither would be shutting the anger away. Enter Ted Lasso. Ted was hurt by Nathan, but he doesn't want to be hurt. He decides he's not, tells himself to move on, perhaps even understands where Nate's rage came from. Either way, Roy and Coach Beard are angry. They don't get why Ted isn't. They think it's weird. They think it's evidence of the fact that Ted is, in Sassy's words, a mess.
Am I a mess?
I don't much like the phrase a mess, but we can get what they mean there. Why is Ted so afraid to be angry? Staying determinedly positive ran him into all sorts of problems last season, something I will talk about in that video I was originally making. And there's the same thread here. You can't just talk yourself out of an emotion. You can't just not be angry or hurt when you feel angry or hurt, if only it were that easy. I think the history of Ted's own dad comes into this, but the point is he has a right to say what he feels. The point that's been troubling him all throughout this episode. Everyone else is caught up in the winner-loser competition. We even see in Roy and Coach Beard how their anger towards Nathan leaves their heads a bit flustered here, going mad trying to outthink him. Ted instead is worrying about being a mess and is thinking about Michelle, thinking about Dr. Jacob, their ex-couples therapist who is now dating Michelle, which you can imagine I have a lot of thoughts about. That shouldn't be happening. Ted's ticked off, and he has a right to say it, and yeah, being angry with a thing somebody has done, or something that has happened, that doesn't have to mean being angry with them as a whole. It doesn't have to mean hating them, despising everything about them. It doesn't have to mean burning all bridges and going to war. No, you can just feel angry about a specific thing, and you can tell them, and that can be good.
Well, you know, this whole thing with you and Dr. Jacob really ticks me off.
And it is good. It helps. It isn't destructive. We're not always able to stop anger being a bit destructive, but we can still fix things, and it can be important as an emotion. Even perhaps positive. Not just in a sense it can drive you to resolve the problems you have with someone else rather than burying them, but particularly in the world of sport, I think anger can be one hell of a motivator. Roy and Coach Beard were not entirely wrong. Anger can get people fired up in a really positive way. You can channel it into a kind of determination, a drive. That was always Roy's superpower.
It's your anger. That's your superpower.
It's not always easy to channel it positively, no, and they definitely get it wrong here, but it can be great. Ted tells Michelle he's angry, but he also says that he loves her, and she listens and understands and even smiles. I think with something of happiness or pride to see Ted finally opening up. She's pleased for him. I'm pleased for him. It's wonderful. Just saying that doesn't solve everything, but it is a good start. Similarly, will he tell Nathan how he feels? I hope he does, but I also recognise that's very complicated because Nathan is on the edge here. Caught between the guilt and care he has for Ted's, this side of him that wants to apologise and resolve it despite being terrified how Ted would react. That, and this other side of him that's swayed by Rupert, that's seeking adulation. I'm a little worried that the sheer fury the team will have at Nate over ripping up that sign might be enough to push him away, to leave him too defensive to dare apologise. In that sense, Ted showing Nate how angry he is and hurt he is could risk that, just making Nate defensive and pushing him away. Maybe. It might require some delicacy, but it's still very important that Ted gets to express his feelings. And even in terms of resolving things, I think it's hard to truly forgive someone until you accept that you're angry to begin with. Anyway, that's all I'll say now because I need time to actually edit this video while it's still topical as an episode. Let me know if it's a bit rushed, if I didn't word things great, or what I forgot to mention in all of this. I'm sure there is a lot of stuff. Comment your thoughts, like the video if you liked it, maybe subscribe, maybe even support me on Patreon. Up to you. Thank you to World Anvil, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Luke Hoare, Treachu Caber, Michael Gallagher, In Squares, Flying Spider, Samara Salsi, Joshua C. Follier and Jab Bramwell. Thank you.